to their futures. Soldiers speak out. Soldiers speak out.
Very briefly, I am Mark Fleming. I'm with Chapter 109 in Olympia, Washington, and we have a veterans counseling program at Coffee Strong, right outside the gates of Fort Lewis. Along with me is a fellow VFP 109 member, Dennis Mills, who also works with me. Lena Swanson, a former veterans, you're
the veterans advocate.
Veterans advocate. Doug Nelson, who is currently a county service officer in San Jose County, California. And Rick Staggenborg, who is a former retired Army psychiatrist.
VA Psychiatrist also, yeah.
So we have a variety of information. We also have a ton of handouts. But very briefly, I want to tell you a little bit about what we do and how we got started. Every Friday from 10 to 2, we are at Coffee Strong, which is a GI coffee house right outside Fort Lewis, Washington, which is now known as Joint Base Lewis-McChord. And we are there for veterans and active duty service members who wish to pursue claims with the Veterans Administration. Work with them in a variety of ways, try to identify claims. We've also learned that we're not just dealing with veterans, we're dealing with active duty members who are also going through various kinds of processing, either being separated for admin discharges, medical boards, things that we really hadn't prepared for. Most of what we've done has really focused on the VA, but we're learning very quickly that there's some other issues that we have to pick up. And we got the idea, I guess it came about in a variety of ways. Our chapter talked about it, so because of that, I studied for the VA claims agent exam and was accredited as a VA claims agent, which means I can represent any number of veterans and I can argue cases all the way up to the Court of Appeals for veterans claims. I don't think I'm quite ready for that. But it took me 3 tries. I had to pass a 25 question multiple choice test. Sounds simple, but it's a lot of very procedural stuff, and most of which you can look up in any of these 2 rather large manuals, but you have to, that's one of the requirements to get the certification. Also, any single individual can represent a veteran on one case. So if you have a family member and you're really good at following procedure and process, you might be able to do it. But there's a lot of procedure, a lot of process. We also got the idea from Vietnam Veterans Against the War, which has a full-time military counselor, Ray Parrish in Illinois, and he also helped me get some information. And if you're really serious about pursuing this, let's say I would encourage you to study for the test so you can certify. One of the things that would come in very handy is the Basic Training Correspondence course put out by the National Veterans Legal Services Program. It's just a basic training course. I used it for one time and it didn't really help me pass the test. Lena taught a course and between the 2 things I passed the test. So it's been very helpful and the more I do this, the more I learn about the procedure. And one of the other things that got me into it, my entire career I've been an investigator for legislatures in Virginia, Arizona, and now for Washington, and I know that there is never a final, or very rarely a final decision. Once you get to the Supreme Court of the U.S., it's probably fine. But up to that point, there's always there's a workaround. It's like no means not yet. So that's the attitude that we take to these cases. And say having the space at Coffee Strong comes in very handy. Getting the active duty members, veterans come in. And what we found is that we've been doing this now for about 1.5 years. Early on, we had a lot of time to ourselves. These days, we come in at 10 o'clock, and we pretty much stay busy all the way through to 2 o'clock when we're done. Sometimes end up beyond that. Dennis we also find out that sometimes we actually have to walk our veterans through the process. Dennis was very good at helping veterans, one veteran get claimed. So before we get into the panel, I'd like to ask, how many people here have a claim or have had a claim with the VA? So you're all pretty much familiar with the process. How many of you have had a good experience with your claim? Okay.
You mean medical or just...
You know, it's gone well, you haven't had to fight it, you've gotten what you wanted. Okay, I'll still raise my hand because I got a claim 30 years after the fact in a few months. We also
I had 100 claims.
Yeah, I only got 30. We had a case of a young veteran who had put in for a PTSD claim a few years ago. It was turned down. He came to us in February, late January. He had records. We reopened the case based on new and material evidence, and 5 months later, he got a 100% claim, which these days sounds almost impossible. So it can be done if you're organized. And I say we also have some cases. I'm working on a case with one veteran who's been pursuing his claim for 40 years. He got 100%, but they only backdated it back to 2004. So we're trying to pursue it beyond that. To get the rate, to get the accreditation, you have to go through the Department of Veteran Affairs General Counsel's office in Washington, D.C.
Well, but to prepare for the little test and everything,
Then
you book and y'all wear.
Go to the National Veterans Legal Services Program. If you Google that, it will come up.
Okay.
I can give you the telephone number. It's 202-253-8305.
Thank you.
Any question back
Quick
there?
point of information, those National Veterans Legal Services books cost almost $200. They come out every July. The best thing to do is find someone who already has, not the book at $200, but the DVD that you can download in a matter of minutes for free, number one. Number two, just out of curiosity, I have a 40-year-old claim too that's only paid back to 2004 for, not for me, but one of my clients. It's based on the new release of proof that certain air bases in Thailand were sprayed with dioxin. That's the same kind of thing you're working on? Or?
Actually, we have one Agent Orange claim that we're working on. Essentially now there's a presumption, certain diagnoses. So
Well, they only paid the 2004, that's what pissed me off, The guy has had the inability to function correctly sexually and all sorts of things.
Say it again?
He had the inability to function in a normal manner.
Any award is effective the first day of the month following the date of receipt of that 526.
That's basically what I always thought. I just thought maybe something like this with the new revelation that has been.
Yeah, they will not go back that far. And like one of the claim with the veteran that's been fighting it 40 years, he got 100% only back to 2004 because they say he dropped his appeal. So now we're trying to prove that no, he didn't do that, but only because he filed his first claim in 1966. So what I'd like to do at this point is turn it over to Dennis. We have developed a technique for talking to veterans based on some of the work that Lena had done. And then Doug Nelson's going to talk about he might be able to talk more specifically to say Agent Orange and PTSD. Lena's going to talk a bit about doing some of the appeals. And then Rick Staggenborg is going to talk about a bill now before Congress that will help veterans get medical care. So, Dennis, you want to take it away?
Yeah. As Mark mentioned, we are at Coffee Strong, just off of exit 122 on Highway 5, really at the gates of Fort Lewis. And we're there on Fridays. What do we do if we're not there on Fridays? Because they come in for coffee all the time, and that's what we want to. A disclaimer, I'm on the board of Coffee Strong. Okay? We've developed, because Mark and I are also on the media team for VFP 109, a program that Mark, Lena, and I did on successfully filing for VA claims. And so we produced a DVD. We produced the handout that you have there, and one of the documents that we leave with them so that they can read is the Veterans Self-Help Guide on VA Claims. And so we produced a stack of these, and the coffee baristas, which are all volunteers, hand those out to active duty or veterans when they come in, so that they have something to go on. Plus our business cards that we produce also has on the back of the card, Coffee Strong VA Benefits Counseling, Fridays 10 through 2, and where it's located so that they have it. Lena Fleming helped us almost a year ago, maybe a little more than a year ago, of saying, you're getting veterans coming in with maybe one claim or something that's bothering them, but you really need to do a head-to-toe intake evaluation, because you're going to find out it's more than just that one claim. And an example, last week, Lena and I were there, and all of a sudden we found out this guy had 8 years of airborne jumping out, and why did his broken, was it leg that he had issues with? Well, he broke it jumping from a helicopter. ta-da, you know, all of a sudden we had issues there. So we developed the claim form that we have for you, and it's a real quick one so that we can go through. And one of the things that we've learned to, you know, the hard way is, oh, let's go through this list again. Are you working with the VSO? And if the answer is yes, then all of a sudden we're secondary to that, or if they haven't worked with the Veterans Service Organization, we can help them or assist them. But we also take a look at their rank, their MOS, and if they have a combat infantry badge for some other things, we'll go through this, fill it out right up front. This is blank, and then what I do when I go home, I take the PDF form, fill it in, or I'll show you, this is a Word form. I fill it in and send it back to them with a pre-filled in 4138, which we have here. So if you look through the claim here, there's a lot of things that will help if they check there, and including the TBI, the traumatic brain injury. We're getting people, they have no ideas until you say, you have headaches? Yeah. Dizziness? Yeah. Ringing in the ears? Yeah. Difficulty making decisions? Yeah. And all of a sudden we go down, it's sort of like, did you get screened for TBI? And they say, well, yeah, they gave me a word association test. I said, excuse me? How many blasts did you go through? I gave up counting after 40. And they gave you a word association test. Not adequate. And so we went through here and we thought, okay, you have some issues there for mild TBI. And we go, questions that they can mark through. We go from head to toe, literally on their hearing, their neck, their shoulders. And you'll notice that in the brackets are codes. Those are codes that are VA codes that they relate to. So by the time they go through this particular document, they land up not with 1 or 2, but sometimes 19 or 23 different compensable items that forces the VA, when they call them in, to evaluate each of those. We have typically found with active duty, they may have 1 or 2 issues, but by the time they finish, before they're med boarded, they have maybe 18 or 19.
One of the practical issues with older vets is records. They may not have them, and it may take more, it may take longer. We also see that with some of the current veterans, but it's a little bit easier if they're, you know, if they're still in the service or they just got out and have records. You know, they can move. Like the individual that got his benefits in 3 and 5 months came in with a really good set of records. He had diagnoses, he had incident reports, he had things that could really document his claim. And when you go back to some of the older vets, and we had a Vietnam vet come in a couple of weeks ago. He doesn't even have his DD-214. So he would have to then get his record. So that takes time.
You know, veterans from Vietnam suffered from TBI, but it wasn't recognized at the time. I guess I have a question.
They didn't recognize anything at the time.
I guess it wasn't recognized until the Iraq War, which was much longer.
Same with PTSD.
No, no, that was 1980. Anyway, my question is, I know that when I was an examiner, we only screened Iraq and Afghanistan vets for TBI. But I assume that if you give them this questionnaire and they test positive, they have to follow up on that also, right?
Right.
And that's compensable.
On the back of the form, or near the form there, you'll see a checklist that 17 questions. Those are questions that the VA doctor used. I took this one veteran who had severe PTSD. I'm not a doctor, I'm an educational administrator, but I do recognize what was going on. And he also had panic disorder and agoraphobia. And so when we filed for that, he went through the hearing examiner, a medical doctor, psychiatrist, or psychologist. He asked those questions. So in the educational research, I thought, where did those questions come from? I found those questions. We listed them here, 17 questions. We go through here, and we have them listed back and forth. Some have only 5 questions to give a little scale on it. Others have the 17. And sure enough, when the psychologist interviewed this one particular veteran, he asked all these questions, and then when the veteran would respond, he asked further up questions. As a result of that, you know, he got a pretty high rating. Mark and I also took the claim over to Senator Murray's office, who is our senator from Washington, and said, rather than wait till you hear an obituary, tell your boss she needs to do something. And so Mark and I, as independent VA claims people, and Lena, get calls from the VA now of, will you help this person that we're helping because they need benefits. You had a question in the back there?
Just more of a comment. My situation is my records, the other side lost my records. So they have no records of me being in July, which is where the event happened. So they're saying no, they denied the claim because they have no records of me being there.
Did you have a combat infantry badge?
No.
Can you get a corroborating letter?
Combat action?
Oh. No, I was nominated for a Bronze Star and it didn't happen.
Question on those badges. What happened to the initial? Because there's a lot of Marines that served in I Corps in 65 to 68 that never got a combat action ribbon.
Did the Marines have something comparable? I mean,
That's the Marines.
The cars,
combat
yeah.
action ribbon.
yeah.
Excuse me, you work through your congressman if there's somebody that deserves or needs a badge. The congressman, the VA has to, or the Department of Defense has to respond immediately to a congressional inquiry. And if he writes a statement that I was such and such a place and my service record shows that I was there, I'm entitled to that, would you get it for me? If they don't get it, then they have to explain to him why not. Okay, but use your congressman. Don't let the congressman off the hook.
You wanna?
I'm a veteran services rep for Santa Clara County. I didn't go looking for this job, it found me. I've been doing it for nearly 5 years now. I gotta tell you,
You can speak while
I'm in awe of these people. They're doing some things on the ground that I can't do because I'm constrained by the county. I went to bat for a guy and got his discharge upgraded. My boss called me in and said, "Hey Doug, you can do these things out of your garage if you want, but you do one more from this office, you're out of here." Why should we get involved in this? There are some things that we can do as a veterans organization, and I realize that we are not a veteran services organization. But if we're going to claim to be interested in justice, we need to see that our fellow vets, our brother vets, are getting compensated. State and local government is reneging on their commitment to veteran services. The VA decades ago said, you states, you counties, you got to cover this, and California would do it by county. I just had a coworker laid off who's an excellent vet rep, passed the qualification test first time around, is excellent with women's issues and military sexual trauma. They put her out the door. Now the women are coming in and saying, who can help me with this? Where's Veronica? Well, we had to let her go. The county let her go. And they turn it back and walk out and say, I'm not telling this stuff to some man. That's where the problem is now. The resources are just not there. It's all about money. I can't speak for other states, but California voted themselves out of paying real estate taxes decades ago because the tap dancing cowboy with a big grin told them they didn't have to pay taxes anymore. And what did they think was going to happen when counties run out of revenue? They can't pay for veteran services anymore. The VA and the veterans organizations, the mainline veterans organizations, have not been very good about getting the information about on Agent Orange and post-traumatic stress disorder. Here's the thing. Service connection is a hay that drives a VA horse. If you are service connected, even if a 10%, you're a higher priority in the VA healthcare system. If you're 30% service connected, you move up to a priority 2. If you're 50% service connected, you're a priority 1. The VA will treat you for anything and they will never hit you up for a copay. The only thing you don't get is a priority 1 that 100% or does get is dental care. We got one of the biggest injustices in our country is the lack of health care. You lose your job, you lose your health care. If this guy was a vet, we got homeless people, we got people coming down with Alzheimer's, we've got all kinds of folks out here who don't know about this. What if, as a chapter, we could have an open house and invite vets and in subtle ways make it clear to them, hey guys, you don't have to buy off on their politics. But look who's helping you. Are the beer drinkers and the flag wavers helping you? The guys with a cinder block building with a rusty cannon in front, the old guys holding down a bar at 8:30 in the morning, are they helping you? Look who's helping you. We got to do this, and there's some urgency here because Rick Shinseki is the department head of the Veterans Administration. The VA became a department under Obama. Obama picked this guy. He's a former Army Chief of Staff. Remember when Bush wanted to move into Iraq? And Rick Shinseki said, hey, look, I'm a military man. I don't make foreign policy, but as a military professional, I got to tell you, you don't have enough men to do what you want to do in Iraq. For that, they sacked him. They made him retire. Obama picked him up to be the head of the Veterans Administration. I can tell you, he's the best one we've had since Omar Bradley. What he has made possible is a wider range of diseases related to Agent Orange. And the VA doesn't care what you did in Vietnam. They don't care if you handed out bed sheets and pillowcases at the replacement station in Long Binh, and they don't care if you were Marine recon out in the bush every single day. You were boots on the ground in Vietnam. If you were Brown Water Navy, Riverine Patrol, if you were on a select list of ships that went up in these rivers like the Mekong and the Qua Viet, you're Brown Water Navy. You were exposed to Agent Orange, and you can apply for these. If you've got, all you got to do is have one of these diseases. What's the next one?
Oh, I think if you, there you go. Here, just hit this button and.
Forward button. Okay. It's the easiest of claims. I've got a sample claim form there for you. It's a separate form if you filed a claim before, or if it's your initial claim. Under disabilities, list diabetes mellitus type 2. The big three that we're seeing are diabetes, ischemic heart disease, and prostate cancer. And then there's a list that tells you about all the others. B-cell leukemia, hairy cell leukemia, all this other stuff. Parkinson's disease. Ischemic heart disease is the one where crud builds up in your aortic arteries, also known as coronary artery disease. That is service connected. All you got to do is state you've got it and tell who's treating it. If your local HMO is treating it, if it's Kaiser, say Kaiser, have a guy run the Kaiser and get his records. But if it's a VA, the VA can get the VA's treatment records with one click of the mouse. Say you got it and put the form in. The specific list of disabilities is there in front of you. The 526 is for original claims. The 526B is if you ever filed a claim before. If you filed a claim in 1966 for a hangnail and the VA turned it down and you never got a dime, that's okay. You started the process. It's a little one-page 526B you do. We're not, Veterans for Peace is not a veteran service organization. The vet can mail his own claim to his state's regional office. These claims are so simple that you really don't need somebody to argue the thing for you. You might have a special case where you were Air Force and you went TDY to Vietnam and there are no records of it. That's going to give you a problem. But if your military personnel records put you on the ground in Vietnam, like yours probably do, you're good to go. We don't want to be a representing organization. We can provide envelopes already addressed with the local regional office's address on it. We can even put a stamp on it and assist the guy in mailing this in. Yeah.
I kind of caught that we don't want to be a representing organization, is what you're saying?
Well, VA, Veterans for Peace.
As in a national service organization.
Right. Yeah, we don't have national service officers.
Right. But you know, it's not politically incorrect, say, to have projects that service veterans.
We're raising awareness. We're making vets aware that they can get medical care and they can get money.
Well, we're going to address that. We're going to address that.
And we're encouraging the independent VA claims agent, which you can take the 25 multiple choice test and you can do everything a VSO or a lawyer would do. And we're encouraging all chapters to have at least one, if not more, people trained and ready to do their work.
Is there a work group for this project?
Right here. I don't think there is.
Well, that's another thing. I'm on a work group. I'm on the corporate personhood work group. I volunteered to coordinate it. And if you're interested in it, you can start a work group. Just go to the website.
I actually chair the group.
You do have it. That was my question. You do have it. Okay.
Yeah, but I need people to turn themselves in, you know, and just
Well,
say.
you're not, I mean, you know, this information should be like veteran-wide as far as
It is,
and specifically PFP.
Yeah, and we're trying to get that, Leah is trying to make this very active, whether PTSD group joins us or
I'll get that
whatever.
website from you.
Yeah.
Yeah, and a lot of us, these different work groups hopefully will work together. I'm also on the PTSD work group, and this issue is clearly driven.
Because that's the program that should be happening, what I heard described there, but it should be like throughout the veteran community.
Yes, it should not just be Olympia, Washington, it needs to be every single place there's a VA chapter. And hopefully, any place like that's near Fort Hood should have a member group that's providing the services. We are really encouraged by having a place that we can be.
Peace chapter in Jacksonville, Florida, but we have thousands of veterans. And so that's what I'm trying to say. I don't see this as organizationally specific, and I hope it's not, and the resources aren't.
We think it's important to note, that because we are Veterans for Peace, we are seen as suspect by the broader flag-waving, beer-drinking bunch. And in fact, we are supporting veterans. And this plenary speaker yesterday talked about find something that is your passion. And that, to me, is something that I can do because I spent all my life investigating.
So your group would be willing to help a non-say PFP chapter in a highly militarized area develop a program.
And we pretty much have it, yeah. I mean, we've gone through the process, we've developed some things.
We can count on you as a resource.
Well, and also in your handouts, you'll find a list of videos that we've produced. We put them on Blip TV. These are hour-long programs where Lena Swanson was training us. There's one, how to interview a soldier. Well, that was a live one. That wasn't just make-believe. We had a person sit down in Coffee Strong, and I call Lena the Iron Lady because she doesn't let anything get by her. And she'll have to sit down and talk straight. And so we've recorded that. We showed it to local television on our cable access, but then we produced it and put it on Blip TV, and we're going to continue to do that.
Thank you.
I have PTSD. I also have diabetes from Agent Orange. There's no diabetes in my family. PTSD is my pet project because when I came on as a veteran bed rep, they sent me to the vet center because they didn't want to go. They didn't want to deal with PTSD. They threw Burr Rabbit in the briar patch. I love working with these guys. Little success story. We had a homeless guy come in, and the vet center lady dragged him in about a year and made him sit down. And I started talking with him on Christmas Eve. Then what'd you do in Vietnam? Artillery. What unit were you in? 8th or the 4th Artillery. Well, you guys were up around Contien and Camp Carroll and Rockpile, weren't you? Yeah. I got the unit up on Google and had a list of casualties. Did you know Joe Smith? The guy starts sobbing. Joe Smith was a good Catholic guy who prayed every day. We got him service connected for PTSD. He went from 50 to 70 to 100. Now this old cowboy lives out in Montana where he wanted to be anyway, and he lives with dignity and some income. He's getting care for his PTSD and everything else he's got. We can do this. We're articulate people. We're intelligent people. You know where homeless people hang out. You could host some kind of event where you have people come in. And first thing, you show concern for the guy. Hey brother, you got PTSD? Yeah, I got it too. Here's what you do. You got to get help for this. You got to go to your vet center on 2nd Street. You got to go to the, or both, the mental health clinic at the VA clinic, mental health section, or at the hospital in Palo Alto. Tell them you were in Vietnam, you're having some problems with this, and let them help you. Next thing you do, you get back with me, I'm going to get you some money. I can get you money for this. Because of Shinseki's help, not only did he expand the list of Agent Orange-related difficulties, he made it easier to claim post-traumatic stress disorder. This guy has PTSD himself. He stepped on a mine and blew half of his foot off. He understands combat vets. You don't have to cite a particular date or particular incident or even the list of people who got killed. You don't have to do that anymore. You make a reasonable statement that I was in a situation where I feared for my life. If you got a combat award, The claim is incredibly easy. You don't even need a diagnosis. You can do the claim before you get help for PTSD. You can do the claim before you get a diagnosis if you just have one of these awards. And I probably left out some. I left out the combat action ribbon for Marines.
And air medal.
Air medal, the air medal has to have a V. They don't accept just the air medal.
If you just flew?
Yeah, if you just, the air medal is for combat missions,
Uh-huh.
but they don't get it. The air medal has to have a V. I think there are a couple of others too. The Navy has one, a combat device, fleet combat device or something that you don't see very often. You don't need a stressor statement to claim PTSD if you got a combat award. You got an example of a form there where you claim PTSD, yes.
Do they apply these standards retroactively, meaning if you applied?
I've had them do it retroactively.
Before all this happened?
Yeah, I've had them do it retroactively. I've had them
So
take a
the new
guy's
standards can
claim.
be applied to all claims?
I think it can. But
any award is not retroactive. If
it's not
7 years
retroactive to the
old,
first
it's-
time you claimed it necessarily, but I've had them do that. Yes, sir.
Is there any truth to the urban myth that when you say you're going from a 50% and you're putting in a claim for now 100% again, and you put in that claim that what they do now is they just send you to the VA psychiatrist because now they're the ones who make the indeterminations, and that psychiatrist can declare you non-PTSD and you lose your first.
No, I've never had that happen. You're not going to lose it. You're not going to lose it. If you put in for an increase, you're not going to lose what you've already
They can't say,
I've never
okay,
heard that
you're
happen.
cured.
You can have a bunch of weirdos with some kind of political agenda. I suppose it's possible, but I got a 10% for good behavior. You go to church once in a while, you were married 3 times, you didn't beat the first 2 up, points off for good behavior. I'm a 10%.
Heightened awareness is part of the diagnosis.
Yes, sir.
I had a strange thing happen. In 1990, I was diagnosed with bone cancer. And I have a titanium bone from here to there. And I had no idea this was anything related to Vietnam or anything. In the year 2000, I was going to a urologist at Columbia Presbyterian in New York. I'm from New Jersey. And he was going through my records, and he said, he said, I see you have bone cancer. I said, yeah. He said, were you in Vietnam? I said, yeah. So he said, he said, this is from Agent Orange. I had no idea. So he said, have you ever gone to the VA? I said, no. So I went and I registered the Agent Orange registry and things like that. Then I kept running into a problem. I went from 30 to 50, and I was kind of stalled at 50 all the way. And that was only for PTSD. They didn't bring up anything about Agent Orange. So finally, after 5 years, I got a call from Newark, from the VA in Newark, and they said to me, Jim, if you drop the Agent Orange charge, we'll give you 100% on PTSD. I felt like a sellout. I went to a lot of other guys and we talked about it and this and that. And he said, look, you've been fighting this for so long. Take the money and run. But now I'm fighting them because what it is they don't want to open up any more cancer doors. And I got letters from Sloan Kettering in New York. I got letters from Columbia Presbyterian, from doctors. And when I brought that over to the VA, that's all of a sudden, a week later, I got the phone call.
Keep fighting that with your veteran. Look, if for the guy who doesn't have an Audie Murphy Award, I didn't have an Audie Murphy Award. I was a dumbass kid, sitting in camp, and I went out to refuel the generators, and in the dark, I put motor oil in the gas tank of the generator. Well, when the inevitable happened, the sergeants give me all kinds of hell, and my captain walks in. He said, look, it's dark out there. Why don't you guys put luminous tape around the gas can and agree that that's a gas can and get off Nelson's ass and let him do its job. The captain was killed 3 days later. The bunker he helped us build helped save my life. Do I have anger issues? Yeah. I do this because Captain Casey showed me how to take care of people.
Can I make one more
My
point?
stressor statement was easy. I just cited his death. Yes.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. I just want to make one more point before you move on. You were talking about how to get people to come in.
Yeah.
A lot of people resist coming in for a couple of specific reasons. They're afraid they're going to take medications. The doctor's going to tell them you have to take medications. They do not have to take medications. They don't even need to accept treatment. And a lot of them think they have to get involved in a program and they have to continue in it while their claim's going on. That's not true either. So make sure that you address these concerns if you do get a hold of somebody who's eligible for a claim. Well, not the new ones. So.
I have for you some stressor statements that got, every one of these got people benefits.
Yes. In response to your question, if the man is 50% service connected for a particular condition, he doesn't need any up-to-date medical evidence to reopen his claim. He can write it on a piece of toilet paper to the VA regional office, say, my condition has worsened, please bring me in for an exam, period. He doesn't need anything.
You don't have to tell any more war stories.
Have secondary sources.
No, it's not.
We have a shrink in Philadelphia who supersedes every VA shrink in the VA Medical Center. And, you know, there's some that are really good.
Yes.
Maybe you don't have to.
There's a good. We've got a real good one in Palo Alto. This is the last thing I've got. If you look through these stressor statements, look what's common to all of them. Dates he was in country, the unit he was in, his MOS, and what he did in a unit. If he was trained as a clerk typist and he was a door gunner, put that. It happened all the time. I was trained in special operations techniques, and I was just a plain radio operator. You just tell what happened. What happened to cause the PTSD? You don't need to be specific. You don't need a date. Just read through these things and you'll see the gist of this. I was on a destroyer. I knew other destroyers were receiving shore fire. We were shot at. I feared for my life. That's all you got to say. And this is because of Shinseki that we can do this. And there's some urgency in here. We got to get this done. We got to get some veterans signed up. Because if we end up with another corporate CEO in charge of the Veterans Administration, we are going to be exactly where we are before.
Also, if I want to add one thing, there was a bill in the Senate about 2 or 3 weeks ago that would have changed the way Agent Orange cases are handled. They would have said, you need to show a cause and effect. And it was defeated 69 to something or other. But there are people in the Congress that want to change that because they do not want to pay these claims.
Right. In the state of Washington alone, there are 268,000 or so Vietnam-era veterans, all of which were stepped one day in country and would be eligible for Agent Orange coverage. They're dying off. I mean, my contemporaries are dying off on a regular basis. Their widows should be covered by this. But we're the ones that need to be qualified to, one, help them get the benefits while they're alive, open up the claims, get the widows the benefits that they should and be eligible for. And this is just the state of Washington. It's in every state that we know of.
So Lena, would you talk a bit about the appeals process? Of course,
well, you want to put Dr.
Staggenborg.
Well, actually, since we're talking about VA processes, I just wanted to go through that, and then Rick can talk about the bills in Congress.
Oh,
so you're next.
Okay. Let me get over here, because I love it. Can I get past you?
And this is one of the things to know about the VA is no means not yet. You can keep pushing. And Lena can tell you how.
This lady's dynamite. I just met her last night.
My name is Lena Swanson. I'm a retired veterans advocate. I worked 30 years for the state of Washington Department of Veterans Affairs. They forced me to retire in 2002 because I ticked them off. I was also a National Service Officer for American Ex-Prisoners of War. I was accredited before the U.S. Court of Appeals for veterans claims. And the word no is not in my vocabulary. And I want to share something with you. On a technicality, the VA cannot close a case. A case is considered open if the VA has made an error. So if you go back, I remember this guy came to me, flew out to me from Iowa, he and his wife, and I had his case transferred to Seattle. I reviewed it for a week, and I tagged all of the errors that I thought the VA had made. I took it into the Seattle regional office. They came back to me and said, Lena, move this case out here permanently, and we'll correct it. Because I told him if I take it to court, it's going to be a nightmare for the VA. He got something like 300 and $70-some-thousand retroactive because it had been closed on there. You've got the decision, you don't like it. You've got it, they said, well, gee, that's not very much. Or wait a minute. You always have the right of appeal, but the minute you get that letter from the VA, the clock starts ticking. You have 365 days from the date that's on that letter to file your appeal. It's commonly called a notice of disagreement. See, I only gave the VA one shot at my clients, personally. I would file a notice of disagreement. I would ask for a decision review officer, which is in the VA regional office, somebody that's independent of the person making the original decision, and he can overturn that original decision if he reviews the evidence. If he upholds that claim, then the veteran should ask for a personal appearance at the local level, the VA regional office. That's when he should have a representative, by the way. And we were talking about service organizations. The beautiful part about Mark and Dennis is they owe no allegiance to anybody except the veteran. They don't belong to a service organization. There's no politics involved. They truly care. These are two of the most wonderful men I've ever met. They are brilliant and they're learned, and Mark is doing a great job. I encourage each of you to get involved in this process and become an independent claims agent for the Veterans for Peace. You have a responsibility as Veterans for Peace, I guess, to keep wars from happening. But we also have a responsibility to help those who have served their country and they're not getting the proper quality of service. So I encourage you to take this program and take that test. Your accountability is strictly to the VA. So, but you've asked for a personal, yes sir?
Can you belong to more than one organization?
You can belong to everybody. I mean, it doesn't make any difference, but Mark is independently...
Yeah, we're not affiliated with any organization.
Right.
You can belong to the...
I'm a service officer for DAV. I can also be an independent.
Well, the DAV probably wouldn't let you do that, but Disabled American Veterans
What
probably
could
would
they
not.
do to him?
They could take away his service
But
credentials.
if he was an independent guy, then he wouldn't care.
That's right, he would.
If I understand
Then
it,
politics.
you have your credentials through DAV.
Right. You
So
can't-
if you left, yeah, so you have to be with DAV to keep your credentials, but if you take the test, now the credentials are attached to you as an individual.
You couldn't use the Disabled American
Yeah.
Veterans name when if you're going to represent a client personally.
But I guess, it depends on, if it works for you and you're able to represent people, then that's fine.
But as a service officer, you're limited by their authority. As an independent agent, you have no limit. You can take the case all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court. You have the same credentials as an attorney. You've got to be able to do research. You've got to know what those books say. You've got to know what those rules say. You've got to study them. There's some things you can't buy with money, and that's experience and time and being able to do the research.
And I can also say, if you've been working cases through DAV, you're going to have a lot of that knowledge already.
Oh, yeah.
Because what I discovered taking the test is these are things that I could easily look up.
Okay, so you've asked for a personal appearance. That means you've gone to the regional office, you're sitting in front of a hearing officer who's not had anything to do. He's supposed to be totally neutral. In fact, the VA is supposed to be user-friendly. If they see you, if that hearing officer sees you making a mistake or he thinks you're missing something, that hearing officer is supposed to tell you. Well, let me clarify something for you. Once the decision is made and you file a notice of disagreement, which is an appeal, and you ask for a decision review, that's not a personal hearing. That means that decision review officer picks up the file, looks at the decision, sees whether or not that it was an equitable decision, whether it was fair or not, and he can overturn the original rating specialist. It didn't require personal.
And if they affirm the original decision, then you can ask for a statement of
That's
the case.
correct. You file an appeal. The rating decision has made a decision. The rating guy has made a decision. And you don't like it. You've asked for a decision review by somebody else. For the first time, by the way, 1998, 99, the VA has allowed the veteran, the claimant, to hire an attorney or an independent agent at the local level. Always before, you could not have an attorney until it got to the Board of Veterans Appeals. That's the first time you could hire an attorney, because nobody's going to work for $10. I helped blaze that trail by my experience so that you could have somebody at the local level. I don't know about the 60%, but I know that people like Mark and Dennis have better qualifications probably than an attorney, because most of them have not had the training that these men have had.
Although there are some very good specialized attorneys.
Oh, yes. Mark, Kenneth Carpenter out of Topeka, Kansas.
Yes.
National Association of Veterans, NOVA, or
Veterans Advocates.
Veterans Advocate. National Association of Veterans Advocates, Topeka, Kansas is one of the best. Ron Abrams with the National Veterans Legal Services Organization. He wrote the benefits manual. He was one of my trainers. But
once you get that
yeah.
status, Mark knows that he has to have continuing legal education. Tell us about that, Mark.
Yeah, once you get the status, within the first year, you have to get 3 hours of training in some very specific areas, which you've already studied. And then within 3 years, you're supposed to have 6 hours. I mean, it's not a great burden. And there's some very good resources. There was a seminar that's now online through the Practicing Legal Institute that was done this spring that covered all of that.
But now the decision review officer, by the way, has upheld the local decision. You want a personal appearance. Okay, back in the original disagreement, the original appeal, you want to make certain things clear to the feds. Number one, I've always gone on the basis that they did not graduate from the 2nd grade. You have to be very explicit and keep it in 4-letter words if you're going to talk to them. In your notice of disagreement in your appeal, you're asking for a decision review by a different rating specialist. If that decision is upheld, it upholds the VA regional decision, then you want a statement of the case. A statement of the case is extremely important because the VA has to explain to you in language you can understand how they arrived at their decision. They have to quote the law, they have to explain why, and they have to show you the evidence that they considered in making their decision. So you've asked for a statement of the case, now you're asking for that personal appearance. And that's when I said you can hire, you should hire somebody at the local level when you get ready to file the appeal. It's the Board of Veterans Appeals is automatic. By the way, it's not automatic. The claim will die. The decision will die at the local level if you don't put in that. You mentioned Form 9, BVA Form 9. That is the appeal process that must go back to Washington, D.C., and the case will go with it. The entire claim will go with it. It will be reviewed by an independent group back there in Washington, D.C. You can submit new and material evidence or new evidence that had not previously been considered. But when you do that, all the Board of Veterans Appeals is going to do is kick it back to the regional office and say, hey, you guys, you didn't look at this. How about reconsidering this in your original decision and see if you can change your decision? So we're taking up time. The better developed a claim is coming in, the faster it's going to work through the system. So what I do when I'm training service officers, tell your people to get their stuff together first. Get your medical records, get your buddy statements, get your life statements, these types of things, get your DD-214s, get your marriage certificates, birth certificates, get all of that together and ship it in complete. Private medical records, everywhere you've been treated, ship them in.
Yeah, Lena,
Yeah.
the guy that got the claim, got his 100% in 5 months, had exactly that. He had everything he needed.
The Board of Veterans Appeals, you have exactly, I think it's 60 days from the date the VA makes its final decision, the regional office makes its final decision to forward this case on to Washington, D.C. to the Board of Veterans Appeals. It is still within the system. You can, like I said, you can submit new evidence that had not previously been considered, but it'll come right back to the regional office. But if the Board of Veterans Appeals in Washington, D.C. upholds the regional office, we now have the U.S. Court of Appeals for Veterans Claims. It was not created until 1988. And no decisions made prior to that time could go back. And this is where the judges that sit at that Court of Appeals are not obligated by the VA decisions. You can no longer admit any more evidence, submit any more evidence, but there's a panel now of 7 judges. There used to be 5, but they're so far behind. They're hiring old retired judges on contract to have them work up the backlog. By the way, you're 1 million cases behind throughout the country. Yes, sir.
Just clarification, The 365 days timeline, that's for the initial appeal. The 60 days is for
The Board of
next
Veterans
level?
Appeals.
Okay.
Right. And then you've got a limited, I think, 120 days from the Board of Veterans Appeals, a decision to go to the court, to file with the court. So it's a lot of information for you to absorb. I hope you'll get copies of this tape, because it's information that you need to know. Just remember, you don't have to accept their decision as final. 1 out of every 4 decisions made by the VA today have a major error in them, a major error. 10 years ago, they used to require 2 years for a grading specialist to be trained. And even then, a supervisor had to make a review before that could be mailed out to the veteran. Today, they've got 1 year, and no guarantee they're going to be reviewed by a supervisor. And the major errors are being made. They're putting you under the wrong diagnostic code, and you're getting a lesser amount of, lesser degree of disability. So be careful, don't assume anything, and have somebody look at that decision. There's 2 kinds of VA awards. One is a service-connected disability. You could be worth $150 million. It wouldn't make any difference if it's related to service. If you're a wartime veteran and you served 90 days or more with the military, and you're indigent, your income is below such and such a level, then you are entitled to what is called a non-service related pension. But your income is deducted dollar for dollar. Unreimbursed medical income is deducted dollar for dollar from that non-service related pension. If you're not getting an award, you should order your service medical records, your VA claims folder, and have somebody review them to see if there's a possibility that you can get service connected for it. Thank you for allowing me to share with you. I don't represent, I don't file claims, I just want to help. Thank you.
Actually, I'm not going to talk about PTSD. What I want to talk about is tens of thousands of veterans who aren't eligible to get claims under Public Law 95126. Veterans who are discharged with other than honorable discharges are not eligible under that law. And I can't give you any reasoning for it, just to say probably to save money again, and they're judging veterans. These are mostly combat veterans or veterans with military sexual trauma who acquired PTSD and the behavior changed such that they pissed off their commander. Maybe they just pissed off their command anyway. That's all it takes to get another honorable. So these folks are among 1.8 million veterans in 2004 who had no access to VA healthcare benefits. They have no access to disability benefits to this day. And those of them that were foreign nationals fall under yet another category. They were promised citizenship by their recruiters in most cases, and yet if they have one of these problems other than honorable discharge, some sort of even a minor problem with the law, well, they passed another law called the Immigration Reform and Responsibility Act that says a number of relatively minor offenses, and I'm not trying to minimize, say, domestic violence, but instead of going into treatment, because again, this is often due to PTSD, they're deported. And so we have a lot of people running around who are very much in need of treatment, some of whom are very dangerous to themselves or others. Probably a lot of them are among the veterans who drove the doubling in the suicide rate after Iraq. Those were overwhelmingly Vietnam veterans, by the way, for the reasons that we just heard. So we got to get these people services. We got to get them not only health care benefits, but we have to get them, make them eligible for disability. So I found out about this when my next door neighbor told me that he knew somebody who'd been fighting on behalf of her son for 30 years. He was a door gunner in Vietnam, served his whole tour, acquired a drug addiction problem, came home, was told to pick up cigarette butts for 6 months before they let him go. He said, screw you, took off. That made him, that put him under PL 95126. If you're absent without leave for more than 60 days, you're automatically in that category. So he was not eligible for benefits. Now there is an exception. If you get an upgrade, then you're eligible for the next step. I'm told by the congressman's veterans aide that I worked with that only about 50% of people get it. And you can imagine probably less than 50% of the people ask in the first place. Number one, because they don't want to beg the service to give them an upgrade when they may have basically told the service to screw off. The other thing is they may be aware that the next step is they have to declare that they're insane as a result of their military service. Now, how many people really want to do that? Well, that's why this guy had to have his mom push it. He wasn't about to go say that himself, but she pushed him. He made that claim. He got his upgrade, and they still didn't take care of it because the VA screwed up. The VA, under this law, the VA doesn't even have to give an examination for eligibility. So it's really a catch-22 situation. It's going to take legislation to fix it. So I wrote a bill that would overturn Public Law 95-126 and those aspects of the Immigration Reform and Responsibility Act that allow the government to deport foreign nationals who served in our military in combat or who incurred military sexual trauma. So the reason that I wanted to speak at this panel is I wanted to get people who are as pissed off as I am about this to go back to your chapters and reach out to other organizations. I'm also working through VFW. I got somebody interested there. He's pushing it up at the state level, and he's going to ask his state commander to push it up to national level. So this is an issue that you can reach out to guys who don't necessarily have a lot of love for Veterans for Peace, but they do have love for veterans. So I still can't talk about this crap without getting choked up. As a psychiatrist, I've heard stories that people won't tell you. They haven't told anybody. You won't see them in these movies because they won't ever tell anybody until they meet somebody like me. And they deserve our help. So I hope you'll leave here and take this message to your communities. I have cards there. I didn't print out the materials that I wrote up on this stuff. I have a petition. I have copies of the law. I have a description of PL 95-126, what it does. I have lots of references for anybody that wants to get involved with this. So take one of my cards if you do want to, and get in touch with me, and I'll forward you all those materials. You can print it off. Give it to everybody. Give it to VFW. Give it to any veteran support group in your area. Any questions? Okay, thank you.